The discovery of fire and the bow and arrow have probably been the greatest factors in helping man to rise above the beasts. The discovery of cave paintings indicate that Stone Age man used the bow and arrow 10 to 20,000 years ago. In more recent history, the bow was one of the chief weapons of armies. Soldiers were encouraged to practice with their bows during peace to develop proficiency in case of war. In England, during many centuries, the bow was in every household, and archery was by far the most popular sport in the kingdom. During these times, there are sagas that tell of numerous feats of skill that were performed in competition. In peacetime, the pursuit of game with the bow became a very popular means of recreation in England. When noblemen took up the sport of hunting with bow and arrow, they passed laws forbidding the commoner to hunt. Thus, those commoners who continued to hunt were considered outlaws, as in the case of the legendary Robin Hood. Competitive archery became very popular among the upper class, and the participants turned out for tournaments dressed in their finery. This trend carried over to America, and for many years only the gentry pursued the sport. Of course, the American Indian used the bow daily in the pursuit of animals for food and clothing, and as one of his chief weapons in warfare. In recent years, archery has enjoyed a tremendous increase in popularity as a challenging alternate for hunting, in competitive sports, and in backyard family recreation. Archery has once again been instituted in the Olympic Games. Modern-day archery has seen a lot of changes, but the compound bow has dramatically revolutionized the sport. Since its inception, over 90% of today's archers are shooting bows of this superior design. This program is intended for beginning and new archers, or anyone wishing to learn the basics of selecting, tuning, and shooting the compound bow. Our host, Pete Shepley, president and founder of Precision Shooting Equipment, is an avid bow hunter. Co-host Terry Ragsdale is a top professional archer whose record speaks for itself.
He hails from Tucson, Arizona, which is a strong archery center in the United States. He is the current world champion, having won the title in Sweden, and in 1982, 83 and 84 was ranked #1 male professional. Now Eric Hall.
Oh! We see Terry now at full draw. But now he must get his arrow completely within the 10 ring, and he has done clearly.
Terry, that was one heck of a way to win the tournament in a playoff. Well, that's where we end our telecast of the Horsham Indoor Archery Championships. We certainly hope that you've enjoyed the skills of the competition.
Let's join Pete and Terry where they're shooting with family and friends at the Laquatchie Archery Range in the beautiful Sonoran Desert near Tucson, Arizona. Home for PSE.
Down a couple. Make it to this 35. Sure, I think you're beating Terry. You missed too. I think you're one up on it. The cactus get you? The cactus got you. Pressure on up there? 35 yards. The world championship shoot right here. Cal, that was a 12 o'clock spot. Nice shot there. Well, time for the rest of the little team. Our turn. Looks like to me you got the knock to aim at out there, guys. You're up at That's next about 8:30, 9 o'clock. ready here?
Yeah.
Okay, we got Michelle with a 3x20. Good job, Michelle. Good shooting. Okay, then Terry. Terry's got a 2x20. It puts Michelle at 1. Yeah. No, not hardly there. Okay, then we got Pete with a 2x19. Good shooting with your hunt bow, Pete. Good job. Laura's got a 1x18.
Good.
Hey, who are your new friends here, Scott?
Oh, this is Mike and Sandy, my neighbor.
Oh, Mike, how you doing? Hi, Sandy,
Hi.
how are you?
Great.
Where are you guys bows?
Oh, we're not archers.
Sure looks like fun.
Hey, we gotta get you going with this. This is easy.
Kind of looks complicated.
Well, you know, Sandy, it's not very complicated. In fact, it's really quite simple and very easy to learn.
They aren't learning much from us.
If you two want to meet us tomorrow about 7 o'clock, we can go over and get you set up and have a shooting in no time.
Sounds like a deal.
Sounds great.
Okay, try that on.
Let's go through like this here.
Yeah, just like that.
It's fairly comfortable. What's this plastic thing here between my fingers?
Well, here, I'll show you. What that's designed for, it's called a cant pinch. That's where the tab gets its name. And it's so that when you're shooting, you don't pinch your fingers together against the nock. If you did, that could cause the arrow to fall off the rest as you draw it back.
Oh, okay. So it kind of separates the string.
That's all it does. I understand you ran into Pete and Terry out at the range yesterday.
Yes, we did. We're supposed to meet him here about 7 o'clock.
Well, that's great. They can help you out personally.
Oh, good.
We need all the help we can get.
Yeah, we do.
I think you're going to find that really getting started and learning is really quite easy. There's not much to it.
Well, everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves out at the range yesterday.
Yeah, it does look like fun.
Well, here comes Pete and Terry now.
All right.
Hi, Mike. Sandy.
We going,
Hi.
Pete?
How you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
Ah, good
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike. Terry.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Hi,
Sandy.
Terry.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, Terry.
What you guys been doing? Talking bows and arrows?
Trying to get them started.
Good. Well, let's get going then. I'm
We're
ready.
Okay, good.
Why don't we go over here and look at some equipment? We can check your draw links.
Let's get started.
Good. Okay, guys, we've got really two types of bows that we have to consider here. We have a recurve bow, which you're probably familiar with, and we have the compound bow. There's really quite a few differences between the two models. We have on a recurve bow, which is, say, like it's used in Olympic competition, which the compound's not legal there. And in some hunting instances, they use a recurve bow. Has a riser section or a handle, has two limbs, with this bend in it, that's where the recurve terminology comes from, and a string. Most of these bows are rated at 28 inches. And so the farther you pull this, the more weight it builds up until you reach that 28 inches. And any pass there, which you can draw, it's going to get even heavier. Now, the compound bows, like we've got, they're going to be rated for specific draw length. This one happens to be 26 inches at 40 pounds. So the obvious differences here, some of the parts are similar. You have a handle or a riser section again. You have two limbs. But the differences here obviously are the fact that we've got a wheel and a cable set up here, which acts very similar to a block and tackle to help bend this heavier limb. This bow, which like I say is a 2640, is going to build weight until we get to approximately half draw. There I'm holding 40 pounds. As that wheel starts breaking over, you have a reduction of about 50%, so you're actually only holding about 20 pounds.
Another couple of advantages the compound bow has over the recurve bow is that it's adjustable and draw weight. Using these limb bolts here, you can adjust the draw weight over about a 15-pound range. The other thing is that you can adjust the draw length using these slots in the eccentric wheels over a 3-inch range in 1-inch increments.
It's a lot more versatile.
Absolutely.
Well, it's going to be a big advantage for you guys because when you're first starting, you're using different muscles than say you're used to using just in everyday sports or everyday lives. So, we can start these things out on the low draw weight ranges, and as you progress, we can crank up those higher weights.
Now, how again does that give you that reduction in weight? Just because the wheel turns?
Well, basically, this wheel is drilled off center. You can see it's not actually drilled in center; it's drilled off center. So as the wheel is being drawn, there you're at peak weight, and then it starts coming back over and actually bending that limb, making it a little bit shorter.
Pete, I've noticed some of those bows have an odd-shaped wheel on them.
Mike, that's a good point. Let me show you one of those. Now, if you remember the other bow we showed, you had a round wheel on it. This is a cam-shaped wheel on it, and the reason for that is to store more energy. And the reason for that is to ultimately get more speed. Mike, I think these cam bows are just the ultimate in a hunting bow because they have a much flatter trajectory.
Well, now that we've covered the basics on equipment, what do you say we go over and measure your draw lengths?
Okay, but when do I get to pick my bow?
We're going to do that in just a second, Sandy. We have to determine a couple of things first, okay?
Okay. Sure are some pretty ones, Mike.
Well, Sandy, before we determine your draw length, we're going to have to find out whether you're going to shoot right-handed or left-handed. And the way we do that is find out which eye is your dominant eye. Terry, do you want to run through that with Sandy and
Sure.
find that out?
Sandy, what we're going to find out is which eye you're actually aiming with, since you do have one eye that will be stronger than the other. So we've got a little test. What we'll do is have you pick out a spot on one of the far walls, and extending your arms out to full length. With the palm of your hands, make a small circle there. And what you want to do is pick out an item, that's with both eyes open, and center that item in that circle. At that point, you'll close one eye, and if that circle moves off of there, then you're aiming actually with the other eye. If it stays on, that's the eye that you're aiming with. We'll have you run through that. Pick out a spot, say like the elk's nose that we've got here. Okay, making that circle. Now, right now, we'll have you close your right eye.
Okay, it moved.
Okay, it did move. Now close the left.
Okay, it's staying right there.
Okay, so what's happening? You're actually aiming with that right eye. So we'll have you set up with a right-handed bow. You'll hold it in your left hand, and as you draw, you'll be aiming with your right eye, which is your dominant eye.
Mike, you want to try it?
Hold my hands like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I close my right eye, it disappears. I close my left, it's right on. I guess I'll shoot right-handed also.
That's good.
Okay, Mike, we've got two ways to determine your draw length, and the most popularly used today would be to take a bow and a full-length shaft, go ahead and draw it to where you are comfortably anchored, and have someone just mark that with a marker of some type. Measure the length to that mark, and that'll give you your approximate draw length.
Bill, would you have a bow and an arrow we could use to measure up Mike with?
Okay, Mike, we've also got another way to measure draw lengths if you do not have access to a bow now, and it works very well, and that's just to make a fist, put it against a surface like a wall, and take a tape measure. Have someone measure back to your anchor point, whether it's at the corner of your mouth, under your chin, wherever you're going to anchor, wherever's comfortable, and take that reading. That'll also give you your draw length.
Okay. Pete, here's the bow. It should work just about
Thanks,
right,
Bill.
Mike. Another arrow and a marker here, too.
I appreciate it. Mike, I've got a nice lightweight target bow here for you to pull back, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Lay your arrow across the wire on the spring rest here, so right there, and you put the arrow knock right underneath the knocking point in the string here.
All right.
Now, for this purpose, I'm going to have you pull back with your index finger to the corner of your mouth. All right?
Okay.
So you put your index finger above the knock and your second and third finger below the knock.
All right.
All right? So you stand, pull it back, index finger in the corner of the mouth with your bow arm fully extended. Okay, you got that? Yep, it's real easy. Just a try here. Get you
Knock
lined
just
up.
below here. My hands like that.
Right. It's real good. Real
Mike,
good.
why don't you turn around and we'll go ahead and mark that arrow. Draw it back this direction.
Okay, you got the hang of this already, Terry.
All right, why don't you run through it one more time just to make sure that we got a good measurement.
Very good. Hey, what do you say we measure that arrow and see what its draw length would be?
Okay. It's kind of fun.
You take and measure right from the bottom of the knock here, right down to the mark we made on the arrow. 29.5 inches. We're going to set your bow up at 30 inches because it's best to be just slightly on the long side than on the short side.
Do you have a bow that I can pull back so you can measure my draw length?
Sandy, I think what we'll use on you, rather than use a bow, we'll use the method that we talked about second, where you put the arm extended out against a flat surface. For now, we'll just use this clipboard that we've got.
Okay.
You want to stand with your feet just slightly apart. Extend your left arm straight out. Make that fist. Okay, up against that flat surface. Now we can get Pete to a tape measure.
Turn your head like you're aiming. Measure right to the center of your chin.
About 27 inches.
That'll be your draw length. Well, now we get to my favorite part, putting the equipment together. Sandy, where do you feel that your interests lie, in the target or the bow hunting end of it?
Pete, competing in the archery tournaments really looks like fun. So I think I want a pretty target bow.
Well, that sounds good to me. Mike, where do you think your interests lie?
I've been a rifle hunter for years, and I really enjoy hunting. I think I'd prefer to pick out a hunting bow. Your seasons are longer, and if I could spend more time in the field, I think that'd be great.
Well, Mike, I think you've made a good choice in equipment there. You know, as well as having one of the very best hunting bows, you've can also use that bow in tournament archery and be very competitive. So I think you'll enjoy the best of both worlds. And I think that's good. Let me see if we can find one, Sandy. You were a 27-inch.
Yeah, I was.
Here's a 27-40. Now this will go down to 25 pounds.
Oh, I like this. This is a very pretty red. It's a laser flight.
Yes, Sandy, this is our top-grade tournament bow. It's a laminated limb and has a round wheel. It's a very smooth shooting bow. Let's see what we can find for Mike. Mike, you are going to be a 30-inch.
Yeah, I kind of like that gray.
Do you have the tree bark pattern?
Yeah, that's what that's
They're
called.
very popular. I think we'll set you up with a 55 to 70 at 30-inch, and we'll set it on the lower end for you to start with, and as you build up to it, we can get up to 70 pounds.
Great.
Let's see if we can find one here. Mike, I have a Jet Flight Express here in a 30-70. Take a look at this. I think it's my favorite hunting bow.
That's one of the ones with the odd wheel we
Got
talked
the
about
cams on
earlier.
it.
Oh, you like that, Mike?
Yeah.
I think that'll work fine. We'll let it down into the probably around 60 pounds so you can handle it and get started with it.
Work up
Train
into it.
Build up to it.
Great.
70.
When do we shoot?
Okay, you think we're all set up here with bows, Terry?
Think so.
Okay, why don't we go over and
Probably need to adjust the weights on those.
adjust the weights, put knocking point on it, put the sight.
Sandy, what we need to do on your bow now, I can explain earlier, these bows are draw weight adjustable. And since we're just getting started, it's probably a little bit easier for you to shoot it, run it down the lower end of that weight range. So by cranking these limb bolts, by turning it out in approximately one full turn, that's going to give us 3 to 4 pounds. So at that 40-pound setting, we'll probably drop it down for you to about 30.
Mike, this bow is set at 70 as it comes from the factory, so, but the shooting range is from 55 to 70. I'm gonna I just let it down to about 60 pounds. As Terry said, about 3 pounds a turn. We don't have to wait because it'll be very close. And be 58 to 60 pounds, that's close enough. So why don't you try that and pull that back and see how it feels. You like,
Pretty good.
you like you can shoot 50 or 60 arrows at a time with it?
Well, give it a try.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay for you.
Sandy, why don't you try that one? That should be set right now somewhere between 25 and 30 pounds. You can handle that with no problem. Want to try over there?
What are you doing there, Pete?
Mike, I'm just going to check the tiller and I'll let it down. I just wanted to make sure the limbs are still in balance. It's just
We're going to do the same thing.
a check that we do at the factory to make sure that both bolts are run down to the same position so that this bottom limb has a little bit more tension than the top limb because of your hand position on the bow is below center.
Okay.
It's just a very simple check, and I just check to make sure it's even to a quarter-inch
See what we're doing here, Sandy?
more on the top than on the bottom. Mike, I set the bow at a weight that I think you can comfortably handle. It's not necessary to weigh the bow because we're going to select your arrow size for your peak weight. As you shoot and progress, you'll probably run the weight of the bow back up to 70 pounds, where you'll be when you're hunting. The arrow rest I've selected, Mike, is the Precision Flight Track. It's a flipper-type rest. Comes with a cushion plunger here. It's very easy to put on. Just slips right into this notch that's molded into the handle here. Just screw the cushion plunger in. I like this rest because it's excellent for finger shooting. It's fully adjustable and in and out, up and down. The plunger's adjustable, so you can adapt it for just almost any technique.
What does that plunger do?
It provides an adjustment to tune the arrow so that the arrow comes out of the bow perfectly straight without fishtailing. And that's all it does. It's very simple. I've screwed it in there. I'm going to take an arrow. I'm going to line this up. Now we'll do the fine tuning when we do a paper shooting test over here in the range, but right now I just eyeball it. I line the string down the web on the bottom of the handle here, and I look down the string, and right now the arrow's pointing too far in. I'm going to loosen up the plunger. Run it a few more turns. So I get the arrow shooting right down the middle of the string. Right there. You see how that looks?
Yeah.
It's a spring-loaded rest. You might.
Okay, and this is moves in like
As
that.
a vein goes by it, it depresses the finger. Works very nice. It's just the best rest for finger shooting you can have.
You can see it's lined up right straight down the string.
Right. That's what we're looking for. Very simple to do.
Great.
Okay, let's go from there. Now I'm going to slip a knocking point on the string. We use this bow square, slip it on the string with the clips, slide it down so that the bottom of the square just touches the horizontal wire on your arrow rest. Now we're going to reference off the bottom of this square, and I'm going to put this on up about 3/8 of an inch. Take these pliers, just crimp it. And I'm going to put it on kind of loose because we might want to adjust it when we do our fine tuning on our shooting through the paper test. After we find out where it's going to be, then we're going to put another one right on top of it to make sure that it will not ever move. Mike, now we're going to install your peep sight. Before we do that, I'm going to put 2 little knots on this string that hold the sight in place. And we're going to do a special knot here so that you can adjust your peep sight up and down. I take 2 lengths of nylon serving thread and run it through the wax. Just makes it kind of sticky and easier to work with. And it's a real simple knot. Anybody can do this. It's just a 1 over granny knot. Knot on top. Go on the bottom. Knot on the bottom. Just snug so you can slide this knot down the string. Don't put too much tension on it. I'm going to do about 16 knots. It's about 8 layers.
Just make a little column.
Just stack them one on top of the other. It actually looks like the serving thread on the bowstring. It's a real handy little knot. In the field, I use the same knot for knocking points. If I should break a string or something in the field, like on a hunt way out in the middle of nowhere, I don't like to have to carry knock set pliers. I'll just use this knot, and you can thread it up and down the serving on the string just like a nut on a threaded rod. And we just finish this off with a square knot. And we'll cut those ends off in a minute. Now I have to do one for the bottom side of the peep sight also. So we'll do the same thing over again. I usually serve this a different direction. I'll just leave about 1/2 inch of string sticking up there. Just like that. I'm going to take a match and I'm going to light that nylon serving thread. So, just let it catch fire. Burns right down. Just smash it right into the knot.
That way it won't come loose.
That's right. Real handy way to do that.
All right.
Pretty easy. Now we're going to separate the string. Make sure we put the peep sight right in the middle. Now we're going to use a fine line peep sight. You see this sight has a little rubber hose on it. And since your peep sight is your rear sight, just like the rear sight on a rifle, fits in your string, you have a front sight on the bow handle, you have to line up 2 sights. Now, the reason for this little rubber hose is to make sure that the sight always lines up so you can look through it as you pull back and get to full draw. Now, if you would pull back and you have a big deer or an elk standing there and your peep sight was turned, you couldn't see through it, you'd probably be very upset.
Yeah.
So this is a little insurance to make sure that it always happens that way. And it's just a good idea. Even the good guys use them. I use it, and most of the guys I know that bow hunt using sights use them. So we're just going to slip it right into the middle of the string. Let me show you here. And we're going to run those 2 knots down. Just like that.
Okay, so that gives you 2 points of reference like on a rifle.
Exactly right. Now we're going to take and put this holds the other end of the little rubber hose. Surgical tubing is what it is. Stick this right at the base of your limb. Okay, now we need to connect the hose to the little pad on there, but to get that on there, it's best to put a little moisture on the shaft. And we just hook the hose right up to it.
That way it won't come loose.
Mike, now we're going to install our sight mount and our quiver mounting bracket. And just show you how this works. See, we have this recess in the handle molded right in so that the sight mounting bracket fits right in there and locks in, so when you screw it down tight, it just can't come loose. That's a problem with a lot of equipment, that it'll happen when you just don't want it to.
Like interlocking components.
That's right. It really works great. I like these QD sight and quiver because you can take the sight right off and leave the mount on. And the same with the quiver. It's real handy, especially when you're going to travel or...
Just snug those screws up.
Mm-hmm. Get these screws started here. Turn this down. As soon as we get this on, we put your stabilizer on your bow sling, and you'll be ready to shoot some arrows.
Sure looks simple when you put it on this way.
Yeah, it is. The sight's very secure. There's our quiver here. Lock it with this.
It's fairly
sling
simple.
nut. Ready to go.
All right.
All we have to do now is put our bow sling on.
What's the sling do?
That keeps you from dropping the bow during the shot. It's just a security.
And this long rod, what's that?
It's a stabilized rod. It's designed to keep the bow motionless for a second. It's just an inertial device, just for a fraction of a second till the arrow clears the bow. Plus, it makes the bow feel nicer.
Kind of balances it?
It's actually a balance. It makes it feel real nice when you shoot the bow. There we are. We have your bow
looks
put
great.
together.
Looks great. A little more weight to it.
Yeah, a little bit. I think you'll like the weight as you start shooting because it has a nice feel to it. Well, I think we're ready to shoot some arrows.
Yeah.
Okay, Sandy, now that we have your draw weight set, the next thing we need to do is set the tiller measurement on it. And the tiller measurement is just, all we're doing there is just setting the top limb basically even with the bottom limb.
Okay.
And the way that I would set this bow up for you shooting your release is to go ahead and set the tiller even on it. The way we'll measure that is measure from that intersection of the handle and the limb straight out to the string on the top. You see that's about 9. And we're about an 1/8 inch less there. Now that would be fine. I'm going to go ahead and set this one even. Now you can check that with the bow scrub like I showed, and probably another easier way to do it if you might not always have access to a bow square, is to do it with an arrow shaft. You go into that same intersection point, mark that with your nail, you come down and you see that we're even. So you can do that with an arrow if you don't have a measuring, like a bow square. Okay, Sandy, the next thing that we need to do is put an arrow rest on your bow, and there are many different types of arrow rests on the market. Now, the one that we're going to use works out very well for this. It's our little CF micro adjust, and we have a springy arrow rest on it. You can see the little recess that we've got that's built into all of our CF risers, and this particular arrow rest will snap right in place. So we put her there, and we've got one bolt to go. And that's all that's going to be required to get your arrow rest mounted. We can take that back off and put it back on. It'll go back in the same place. So now your rest is mounted. From there, we need to put a nocking point on. We'll go ahead and slide one on the string, and using our bow square, we'll go ahead and get her in place. Now we're going to start out about an 1/8 inch above square. Now there's a couple of different things that can affect where this actually will end up, but we'll fine tune this a little bit later when we get over and chop. We'll go ahead and crimp her in place. We'll leave it just a little bit loose because, like I say, we'll be moving that when we get over and start doing a little bit of shooting, but now we're ready to go. All right, Sandy, now that we have your nocking point and arrow rest installed, our next step is to go ahead and to install a sight on your bow. Now, we're going to use a little bit different sighting system that we put on Mike's bow because the applications are, even though we're doing the same thing, are going to be quite different circumstances. Now Mike's sight, where you saw that had the 5 just set pins that did not move, well, they actually are movable, but you predetermined distance, say 20, 30, 40, 50 yards, and set those, and you're going to be estimating your yardages. Now, the type of sight that we're going to use on your bow is an adjustable target sight. Now, when you get ready and we get this thing set up, we're going to go out and shoot these predetermined yardage. You're going to be shooting the same yardage throughout the course, and we'll go ahead and zero this thing in and mark it on the bar here.
So this will move up and down to whatever yardage that I
Right.
want, right?
Right. You've got 2 adjustments, or actually lockdowns, that will adjust the yardage up and down, and you also have a finer adjustment for adjusting windage, right and left. Now, generally that doesn't change too much, but you'll need that adjustment when you're setting the bow up and sighting the bow in.
What is this little bubble here that looks like a level help you do?
Well, Sandy, what that is, this obviously is your scope, and when you're shooting, it's very important that your bow be held straight up and down. Now, you know, under most circumstances, you may not need that bubble on there, but when you get into a situation where you're shooting on a little bit of a side hill, you know, it appears you may be shooting straight when you're not actually holding that bow straight up and down. So that's really what that helps you do. So we'll go ahead and put that on. You can see the recess that we've got here. Here's our sight mount. That'll fit, lock in. Now that is your base or your dovetail. Now this side is going to slide in. You see set screws will hold it in place. You see the two dimples in the sight mount itself? Now we're all set. Okay, Sandy, now that we have your target sight installed, we still need to put a peep sight in the string, which we'll use for your rear reference point. Now we're going to use a little bit different peep than we used on Mike's bow. Now Mike's was a fine line peep, which had the rubber tubing, which would hold that straight. Now this peep is going to serve the same function. It's going to be your rear sight. It's going to fit in the string in much the same way.
Why doesn't my peep sight have rubber tubing like Mike's?
Well, Sandy, that's a very good question. Now, when you're in a hunting situation, you don't always have time to make sure that everything is nice and straight, because this peep sight, as you draw it, now the string has some twist to it. Now, as you're drawing back, now that thing may be sitting at an angle when you start, and when you draw back, it needs to be straight, so you're looking through it. Now, you know, in tournament archery, when you're out shooting, you'll have time to make sure that's nice and straight and draw it back and have everything correct. Now, in a hunting situation, you may not have that time to prepare for the shot. Draw back, if the peep sight's crooked, you couldn't see through it, you know, it would blow the opportunity for a shot on an animal. So by having that little piece of hose on there, that'll hold it nice and straight for you. Now, what we're going to do, because everyone's face is built a little bit different, and your anchor point that you use is going to also be different, the height from your nocking point, your peep sight, is also going to vary. So what we'll do until we have all that established, we'll go ahead and leave this loose. It won't move in the string as long as it isn't bumped, and we can, you know, make sure we have it all set up. Then we'll tie it in where it will not move. Okay, Sandy, we also, on your bow, you probably noticed this rod, which is a cable guard, and we need to make sure this is tight.
What purpose does that serve?
Well, Sandy, let me get this tight. Let me turn it so you can see what we've got. You can see with this narrow wheel that we've got here, if we did not have this cable guard pulling those cables over to the side, that you wouldn't be able to have any type of clearance between the fletching and those cables. So all that's doing is just simply pulling those over out of the way.
So you would have to have one of those on all bows?
Well, on most all bows, there are a few bows that do use a wide eccentric wheel, which will allow you to have that clearance without the cable guard rod, but probably 90% of the bows nowadays do use a cable guard. Okay, Sandy, now we're ready to put a stabilizer on your bow. You probably saw the one that Pete put on Mike's bow earlier, which is a shorter model than what we've got here, but the purpose that it serves is really going to be the same. Now, Mike's stabilizer is primarily added just for balance and for weight. It's much shorter, so it's easier to maneuver when he's, you know, in the woods. Now, that stabilizer, being a little longer, really serves two purposes. It helps cut down on the side-to-side torque that you have, but again, you also have the balance factor. But another reason that this thing is longer than his, during your round, if they're going to be shooting a lot of arrows, and you'll be out there for a long time. You've got a short bow that's really not that easy to handle as far as your in-between shot time, so by having this longer stabilizer, it'll also give you a prop.
Kind of like a kickstand.
Well, it does work that way. Sandy, why don't you go ahead? This stabilizer screws into that insert. Why don't you go ahead and put that on?
Okay.
There you go. Why don't you go ahead and try that? See how much better that bow balances with that out front?
Yeah. Oh,
And-
I like this.
Good. And like I say, in between shots, that longer stabilizer will give you something to rest it on, too. So. Well, Sandy, now that we have your bow ready, we're to the point now we need to select a proper arrow for it. Peter, you and Mike ready to select arrows for that bow as well?
Yeah, our bow's ready. Bill, would you please bring us the Easton arrow selection charts, one for target arrows and one for hunting arrows? Mike, this is really pretty simple. Easton has this all figured out, and all you do is look at the chart and know your bow weight and your draw length. Just look down the chart and you have the arrow already selected for you.
The chart's Pete. There's
Oh,
the hunting. And
thanks.
Here's the target one.
Thank you, Bill. Terry, you want to go through this with Sandy on
Sure.
selecting her arrow first, and we'll watch.
Sandy, what we're going to do on here, Easton has this already calculated for us. We'll go off your arrow length. Well, your draw length on your bow is 27 inches, and you're shooting at this point about 30 pounds. You'll be adjusting up to 40 later. So we're going to go off a 28-inch arrow length, and for this column where it shows 50% let off, which that bow has, we're going to look. This will be a perfect category. It shows 33 to 40 pounds, and you're starting at about 33, and you'll be working up later. So if we come down here, you'll see that these are the shafts that they recommend for it. There are several different sizes that will work. And I think for what you've got there, I think a 17-14 would probably be our best bet.
Okay.
All right?
Mike, let's look at yours. I'm just going to have you do it. This is a chart much like the...
Basically the same thing.
mhm. Yeah, we have all the draw lengths across the top. And this column on the left side is for a recurve or a long bow, and this is your actual bow weight. And then this side is for a compound bow with 50% let off.
Okay, so my bow's about a 70-pounder, so
Okay, let's go down to 70
Here.
in here. And what was your draw length?
29 and a half. Actually.
29 and a half. You're probably going to be shooting, well, you'll be shooting a 29 and a half inch arrow with the center flight riser. So what do you find here?
Looks like a bunch of them, but the one that's lit up in white here is 2117.
That's the most popular size for what they recommend, and that's what I would recommend, the 2117.
Pete, what do the numbers 2117 mean?
Well, Mike, 21 means it's 21/64 in diameter. The 17 means it's 17 thousandths wall thickness. There's probably 30 to 40 different arrow sizes to fit all different draw lengths and weight range bows. Maybe you're going to have a bow that's 20 pounds, you can have an arrow that fits it. Maybe a bow that's 100 pounds, and you have an arrow that fits that. Well, the way they do that is different diameter arrows with different wall thicknesses, so there's different mass weights, so you can have different lengths. It's just lots of combinations of them. That's the way they designate them all. Well, now that we have the bows put together and the arrows selected, the most important thing we have to do is get the bow shooting properly or tuned. Now, there's no real reason to go to the range and sight your bow in if the arrow is going to come out of the bow and wobble sideways or wobble up and down, or a combination of those two. So we're going to do a real simple paper test, and we're going to shoot arrows through that paper. And what it's going to do is going to tell us which way the arrow is wobbling, or which way, which direction it's coming out of the bow. So we'll adjust the knocking point accordingly, and we'll adjust the in and out of the arrow rest or the center shot of the bow accordingly. And it's really a very simple test. Terry, you have anything to add to that?
Well, it's a particularly good test because it's something that, you know, when you're trying to tune a bow, when you're shooting an arrow, you're particularly at a disadvantage if you're alone in trying to do it, because you're trying to shoot and have good form at the same time trying to peek to see exactly what that arrow is doing. And even if you do have a friend along, someone to help you, it's still difficult to see because of the high speed this arrow is traveling at exactly what it's doing. So shooting it through the paper actually documents it. It shows you what you've done when you shot it. You make your adjustments. You take your best, guess from the information you've got there. Make that adjustment. If it's better, you go in the right direction. If not, you need to go the other direction. So it's the best way there is to do it.
I believe it's the very best test for tuning a bow.
So we want the arrow to come out of the bow as perfectly straight as possible.
That's right, without any wiggle
Okay.
or minimized. So it's very difficult to get it absolutely perfect, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect.
Ready to do some shooting?
Sure.
Let's
All right.
shoot an arrow.
Okay.
Snap on there, Mike. Okay, Mike, this is really a pretty good shot. Not a bad tear at all. You can see that the point entered on this side, and the veins, you can see where the arrow veins went through here, so the knock end of the arrow went through on this side, so it tore high into the left, or knock high left. We're going to do two adjustments. We're going to move the knocking point down, and then hopefully get a horizontal tear in the paper, and then we're going to do an adjustment to your center shot or to your cushion plunger pressure point to reduce the horizontal tear. Okay, Mike, now that we've moved the knocking point down, let's try to shoot another arrow.
Is there a set distance that should be from this paper here?
Yeah, and you're first starting about 4 or 5 feet, and after you get a shooting good here, I like to try it at like 10 feet and 15 feet and maybe 20 feet.
Okay.
But this is the most important right here. Okay, Mike, that's really a real good hole, real good tear there. You can see the vertical portion of this now, and this hole is gone. So we have just a slight amount of tear left, but it's probably only a 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch at the most. And really, on a hunting bow setup, I would leave that alone. But I think we'll probably progress, and we'll just try the other adjustments, see if we can't get it all out, because we want to tune it as perfectly as we can. Well, Mike, I think you're ready to sight that bow, and that bullet hole there is near perfect. I don't think you can beat that at all. You see, we made 2 real simple adjustments in the for the arrow flight. One was in a knocking point to bring the knock down, and then one was in the pressure point. Moved it out to get the horizontal tear out. This is real easy with the center flight riser because there's total fading clearance and there's no hitting of the vanes or any part of the arrow on the bow at any time. So it makes it very easy to tune. Generally, you should be able to tune the bow in 2 to 3 or maybe a half a dozen arrows if it's not hitting. Now, if the fletching is hitting the bow handle someplace, then you're going to have a lot of problems doing that. Well, Mike, I think we've got your bow tuned as perfect as we can get it. Let's turn it over to Sandy and Terry and let them get the target bow tuned up.
Fine.
Take this one down.
Okay, Terry, what are we going to do here?
Well, Sandy, we're going to just basically repeat the same process that we just saw Pete and Mike go through. So you get this piece of paper up, but at the same time, we have to also set your peep size. We haven't adjusted for you yet, so we can go ahead and do that while Pete's putting that paper up.
Help me here, Mike.
Sure.
You know, this computer paper works really good for doing this. Just keep it kind of taut. You can use newspaper for this test if you want, or butcher paper. We have a lot of computer paper around here, so I like to use that. You know, it's really easy to do these. Just make a frame, a wooden frame, a couple of wooden dowel rods, one to hang in the ceiling, one to hang on the bottom of your paper. It's real, just a metal frame like this, real easy.
Works really nice, too.
Okay, Terry, ready for you guys.
Okay, Sandy, we're all ready to go with the exception. We've got one final thing. That's we have to set that peep height. So what I'll have you do is put your release on, go ahead and draw to where you're comfortably anchored, and I'll slide that down for you. Is that good there?
Okay, yeah.
How's that right there?
That's perfect.
All right, Sandy, if you're ready, we're going to basically follow the same steps that you saw Pete and Mike go through. We're going to start at about that same 4 to 5 foot spot, and we're going to go ahead and shoot one through the paper to see how close we've got your bow set up.
Okay.
It's aim right in the middle of the paper. Well, Sandy, looks like we had a good guess on our knocking point. We're just toward mostly left. We got just a little bit high and mostly left. So most of our center shot adjustment is what we need to do at this point. So we'll go ahead and move that. Probably at that point, need to move that in just a little bit. Now to do that, you can see I need to loosen this screw.
That's moving the rest in.
All right, see how it's moving in? Okay, Sandy, now we've got that adjusted. Why don't we try another shot of there and see how we did?
Okay. Thank you, Terry.
How's that?
That was great.
Sandy, as good as that hole looks, I think that we're tuned up. So now I think we should join Mike and Pete and do some shooting.
Good, I'm ready.
Let's go.
It's very important to be very positive about what you're doing. So when I say push, I want you to push very hard. When I say pull, I want you to pull very hard. So when I say aim, push, pull, flap, because you're shooting fingers, I don't say flap. If you're shooting release, I'd say squeeze. But by flap, you're going to have your bowstring pulled back on a flap. So to flap in slow motion, you have to release the string, come back behind your head, flap your hand together. Works very well and has the correct follow through if you do it every time. Back.
Yeah.
Well, this time I want you to flap. You always think positive when you're going to make a shot. Aim, push, pull, flap.
fun.
Real good. Got that equipment's smoking.
Helps with a little good advice.
Not bad, a bull's on the second shot.
Sandy, just think aim, push, pull, squeeze, Sandy. Very
Nice
good.
shot.
Thank you.
Pretty good. Well, I think you guys are pretty well set.
Well, that was really fun. I'd like to thank you for all the help.
Yeah, you
Thanks a
got
lot,
Great,
Pete. Terry.
thank you.
Sandy, you shot
Yes,
really
well,
well.
appreciate it.
Thanks for the instructions.
Yeah, we'll see you at the range maybe Sunday morning.
All right.
Yeah, good
Sounds
idea.
good. Let's go.
How's that sound?
See you there.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Mike, you ready to try this 40-yarder?
Yeah, see if I can remember everything you told me here.
Got 20 and 30 sided real good. Remember, a nice push, pull, flap. Aim, push, pull, flap.
Like I said with mine,
Good shot, Mike.
Sandy, you ready to shoot that 40-yarder?
I'm ready.
You've probably been paying just a little bit right because of that wind we've got coming across.
Good shot.
Let's get this right.
Good shot.
This is a lot of fun.
Sandy, that first shot's just on the left-hand side of you. Still got that breeze coming across. So on this one, hold just a little bit farther to your right than you did on the first one. Get good height. Just keep attention and squeeze that release off. Good shit.
Shooting really well. Just doing good.
There you go. Squeeze it off. Good shit.
Good shot.
Hey, this is great. This is one sport I can keep my husband at.
Well, let's hang up our bows and go pull our arrows. No, you shot great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Said I need it.
Good sight marks. What do you say we go around the archery range?
Let's go.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right.
Go. Terry and I have just shown you how simple and easy it can be to get started in archery. Now I'm going to show you some helpful hints on the different styles of shooting and recap some important information on getting you set up to shoot your bow. The compound bow is the most widely used bow in archery today. Over 99% of the people involved in the sport use them. The compound bow has seen a lot of changes since its beginning. However, it still uses the same basic principles: a wheel or a cam, a limb to store the energy, and the cable system to help pull it back. The wheels or cams rotate about an off-center axle. This is where you get the build-up and let-off in weight. As the bow is drawn, the cam travels up and over the top or peak of its cycle. At this point, the bow reaches its maximum weight. We call this the peak weight. As the bow is pulled back further, the cam drops over to the bottom or valley of its cycle. At this position, the bow is at its minimum weight. We call this holding weight. Most compound bows are designed so that the holding weight is about 50% or one-half the peak weight. The compound's wheels or cams are programmed to help bend the limbs which store energy as they are pulled through the peak cycle. The longer they are at the peak, the more energy they store. We have two graphs that illustrate the difference between a wheel and a cam. Both graphs represent a compound bow with a peak weight of 60 pounds and a holding weight of approximately 30 pounds at a 30-inch draw. You can see as the wheel bow is drawn, there is a gradual buildup until it reaches its 60-pound peak. Then almost immediately, the weight starts dropping to the holding weight of 30 pounds. Now notice the difference in the cam bow. It reaches its peak weight much sooner and holds that weight longer than the wheel before it drops off to the holding weight. The yellow area on these graphs represents stored energy. When you release the string to shoot the arrow, the wheel and the cam go back over the peak, releasing that energy, transmitting it to the arrow. Obviously, since the cam pushes a given arrow through the 60-pound power stroke for a greater distance than the wheel, the arrow will leave the bow traveling at a greater velocity. However, you don't get this extra speed for free. If you've ever compared a cam bow to a wheel bow of equal weight, you'll know what I mean. The cam bow is more difficult to pull. I personally like the cam over the wheel because I like the added power and speed for hunting. The PSE cam is every bit as accurate and reliable as a round wheel bow. In addition to the reduced holding weight, another advantage of the compound bow is adjustable draw weight. The draw weight is adjustable over a 15-pound range by turning the two limb bolts equally. When just starting, you will probably adjust the draw weight to its lowest setting. When you get used to drawing the bow, you can increase the weight by tightening the limb bolts. Don't overdo it. Pick a bow that you're going to feel comfortable shooting time and time again. We've already discussed the methods for determining draw length. You can either use the marked arrow method or the hand against a flat surface method. Now I'm going to discuss the three different styles of shooting. The first style would be instinctive shooting. The only equipment required for this is an arrow rest and a nocking point. There are many good arrow rests on the market today. For this setup, I've chosen the new PSE Flight Track arrow rest. You simply insert the arrow rest in the recessed slot on the handle, screw in the cushion plunger, as I'm doing here, and finger tighten the lock nut. Now that we've assembled the arrow rest, we're ready to install the nocking point. The first thing you need is a bow square. Take the bow square and clamp it to the string, then slide the clamped end down the string until the other end just touches the arrow rest. A good starting place for the nocking point is around 3/8 of an inch above perpendicular to the string and the arrow rest. This is to allow for the diameter of the arrow nock and may vary with different size arrows. Crimp the nocking point with a set of knock set pliers. Now the next step is install your cable guard. This is really quite simple. It's important here not to strip the threads. I use my Allen wrench set to spread the string and the two cables. I'll hold the set horizontally, stick the cable guard rod between the cables and the string, and start it in the insert. Turn it all the way in until it hits bottom, and back it off to the closest turn backwards. Lock it down with your 9/16 wrench. Install your slide, cable guard slide under the cables. Set it up on the rod, and you're ready to go. Now let's adjust the arrow rest for center shot. Take the arrow you're going to shoot, snap it on the bowstring under the nocking point, and lay it on the arrow rest. Now we must find the relationship of the bowstring to the center of the bow. Now find where the string attaches to the cable and follow that cable up to the cam. Now we must determine how far off center this cable is from the center of the bow limbs. We're going to use our bow square to perform this measurement. On this particular bow, the center of that cable is 1/8 of an inch to the left. Now, we come down to the bottom of the bow limb where it attaches to the bow handle and find center. Mark our center point there with a pencil, and we make another point 1/8 of an inch to the left. Now, we'll hold the bow at arm's length, rest the bottom wheel or cam on something so you're steady, and with one eye closed, align the bowstring on that left mark. Now, without moving your head, look down the bowstring and see if the arrow is split by the string its complete length. If it is not, if it's inside center, move the arrow rest out until the string does split the arrow the full length of the shaft. If it's too far to the left, move the arrow rest in. Now you can tighten the lock nut with your 1/2-inch wrench and you're ready to go. Now we're ready to shoot the bow. All the adjustments we've made so far are just to get you started. To determine if the arrow is flying properly, I recommend a paper test. The paper test will show you if your nocking point is too high or too low, or if your arrow rest is too far to the right or left. If your nocking point is too low, your arrow will come out tail low. To correct this, move your nocking point up. If your nocking point is too high, your arrow will come out tail high. To correct this, move your nocking point down. If your arrow comes out tail left, your arrow rest is too far to the right. Move it out. If your arrow comes out tail right, your arrow rest is too far to the left. Move it in. Now the arrow rest adjustments are for right-handed shooters only. If you shoot left-handed, your movements will be just the opposite. Since you've already seen Mike and Sandy do the paper test, we're not going to go through that again. It's very easy to get set up to do this test. All you need is a frame, some newspaper, and tape. A picture frame like this one works well. Tape the newspaper to the frame and hang it a few feet in front of the target. Now stand back 5 feet from the frame, shoot through the paper, and make your adjustments. Now we're ready to shoot. To shoot instinctively, use eye-hand coordination without the aid of a sight. Draw the bow back and aim out over the arrow. Without the use of a front sight, you're going strictly by judgment, so accuracy may take a while to develop. The next method of shooting involves the use of a front sight. If you hunt, I suggest you get a good sturdy sight, like the Mongoose 105. It has solid lockdown sight pin adjustments and a guard to protect them. On our new center flight handle, a sight like the arrow rest fits into a recessed slot. Again, this assures you that the sight is securely mounted. After the sight mount is installed, slide the sight into place and tighten it down. I prefer to use 5 sight pins. I'll sight the top pin in at 20 yards and progressively to 60 at 10-yard increments. To get accurate with this setup, you want to make sure that you get a good consistent anchor point. The shooting method that offers the most consistent accuracy is a setup with a front sight and a rear sight, more commonly known as a peep sight. For an arrow rest on this bow, I've installed the Micro Adjust Springy. When using the front and rear sight combination, line up the peep sight with the proper front sight pin. The peep sight forces you to line up consistently shot after shot. For my personal hunting bow, I prefer to use the front and rear sight method along with the added dimension of an overdraw system. By using the overdraw, I can shoot a shorter, lighter weight arrow and achieve a velocity of approximately 30 feet per second faster than a conventional bow setup. This increase in velocity provides for a flatter trajectory and ultimately more accuracy, particularly in a hunting situation where yardage judgment can be critical. Now let's install the bow sling and the stabilizer rod. I think it's important for all archers to use a bow sling no matter what their style of shooting. The main reason for the sling is to allow you to shoot the bow with a very loose and relaxed grip. By shooting with a relaxed grip, you impart less torque on the bow, and thereby the bow will shoot more accurately. This sling is very reliable and it's always with the bow. You slip your hand up into it very easily, it comes out very easily. Now let's install the bow sight. In my bow I use a 106 Mongoose sight. The sight base installs into the recessed slot on the handle so that there's absolutely no chance of it coming loose or moving. It's a very reliable sight. Now, there's several advantages to the 106 sight. The main thing is, this sight was designed for higher speed bows. It's shorter, lighter weight, allows you to get your sight pins much closer together. Another advantage to this sight is that you can take and remove the inside sight bar with the pins on as a unit, put another set in, and sight the bow in for broadheads. So it's nice to have your bow sighted in for broadheads and field points at the same time and not have to change anything. So let's install the sight. Slide the sight in, tighten it down. I especially like this sight because it's easily removable and goes back to the same place no matter how many times you take it off or on. Now let's put the quiver base on. This mounts right on the sight mounting block, 2 screws. Very sturdy and very reliable. This quiver is also a quick detach. Holds 8 arrows. Now all we have to do is attach our 8-arrow quiver, slide it in the groove, tighten it down, and we're ready to shoot.
hope you enjoyed our program. Your basic selecting, tuning, and shooting guide for modern compound bows is the first of a series of instructional programs. Look for future releases dealing with intermediate and advanced instruction. Also look for our exciting PSE Adventures in Video Bow Hunting series.
Ever since man released his first arrow toward his target, he has been striving to become more accurate with his bow. PSE continues in that tradition, preserving the excitement of bow hunting by producing the most accurate bows and archery accessories in the world. PSE Centerflight bows bring a new dimension to the art of bow hunting. Centerflight handle design, sturdy hunting sights and quivers, adjustable wheels, non-compromising power cams. Make your shot count with precision shooting equipment.